Hello, welcome back to another video. I decided to make a short video about Sirus, Awakener of Worlds, just to break down his phases and attacks and how I approached him to successfully down him on a variety of builds. Personally, any of my builds are a success if I can kill bosses like Sirus and Uber Elder with them. So the fight starts with a little cutscene. I'm using a video of my Stormrand character killing him just because honestly it's quite easy on him and it doesn't reduce visibility. You will have to go through 2 rooms to get to the Bossfight arena. Once you are there, you'll have to navigate several storms until you find Sirus. He's more or less in the middle of the arena. The fight consists of 4 phases where every new phase introduces new attacks. To start the phase 1, you will have to find Floaty Sirus. He will be doing his floaty form attacks, which are fairly dodgeable, and he calls out every attack, so if you're new to the fight you should listen to in-game audio. The fight itself is taking place in a smaller arena, which is signaled by a red circle during the first 3 phases. Once he's on the ground, he will be doing his default beam attack, which is easily sidesteppable as it's not very fast. As well as every 3-4 default attacks, he does a bigger multi-stage beam, aka die beam, which in first 3 phases is stationary. While that is going on, his floaty form will rain attacks down on you that you have to do your best to avoid. The end of the phase is signaled by him ascending to his floaty form and spawning a storm. I like going to the left to lure him out of the storm. To start the phase 2, you must step close to him to make him come to the ground. Phase 2 is much like phase 1, except there are 2 new attacks. Trench dodgeball, where you have to either move from side to side in a trench to avoid fiery balls or exit the trench to stop his attack. The second one is Meteor Maze, where he teleports you to the middle of the arena and summons a wall or series of walls in later phases that you have to navigate and leave before he calls down a meteor that deals lots of damage. When the phase ends, he will ascend to his floaty form, and I like going to the left to lure him out of the storm. Phase 3 is much like the 2 previous phases, except the Meteor Maze has 2 walls. Another thing to consider is that every time you cross the red boundary line or die, he will spawn an extra storm. This effect is present for the first 3 phases. At the end of the phase, I like going to the top to lure him out of the storm. So after finishing phase 3, the 4th and last phase begins, where he heals back to 50% life, or in my case to 75%, as this is Awakening level 8 Sirus. This is where the fight becomes, quotation marks, fun. This phase, apart from all previous attacks with slight changes like Meteor Maze having 3 walls and the die beam following you as you try or not to dodge it, have several new attacks that can be very deadly. First, let's talk about how to track him. After several attacks, he will change his position in the arena, and to be able to dodge his attacks, I recommend staying on his behind. The way you find him is by looking at the direction he is facing right before he teleports. Keep in mind it's not always the same distance. And sometimes he leaves a red trail behind. One of the new attacks is the Spinny Beam attack, where Sirus summons 3 copies of himself, and after a short channel, 4 spinning beams appear. The original Sirus is always the first one to pop up, and he can be damaged during the channel phase. You should know that the Spinny Beam applies a stacking movement and action speed debuff, so you really don't want to be standing in it if you can avoid that. Another new attack is a Party Die Beam, during which Sirus summons many copies of himself in a circle, and after a charge up time will release a stationary Die Beam. This attack is fairly easy to dodge if you just run around in a circle, although can become harder if he does it during the Spinny Beam phase. Also, he cannot be damaged during this attack. During this phase there are no air attacks from the floaty Sirus. Obviously, this phase is the longest due to having some attacks where he cannot be damaged and the sheer amount of dodging involved, as well as having to kill 75% of his life instead of 25% as in previous phases. Alright, you might think that my Stormrank character is super easy mode Awakener, and I would say you're probably right. So here is a clip of my Chain Hook character starting phase 4. As you can see, true melee skills, unlike Lacerate, which lets you keep your distance, have a much harder time in this fight due to the sheer amount of dodging one must do. And yes, this character is well geared, but the opportunities to deal damage are quite few. As you can see, sometimes Sirus is in a position where it's difficult to approach him, so in these cases there's nothing left to do but dodge his attacks and wait for a better time to attack him. With such a melee forward skill as Chain Hook, I must always be aware where Sirus is facing, as I wouldn't want to be zapped by any of his beams. So even when there is an opportunity to damage him, it constantly has to be interrupted to reposition. Hopefully this was helpful to some of you. Thanks for watching, and be sure to check out my stream if you are new here. Bye, bye, bye.